Zahara, a kind and intelligent woman from Mombasa, had just married Tendai, a well-known and respected banker from Harare. Their wedding was like a dream. Beautiful lights, happy music, and loving family all around. Zahara looked stunning, her makeup perfect, her smile glowing. When she and Tendai danced under the fairy lights, the crowd cheered, thinking this was the start of a perfect love story. But everything changed the moment they stepped into their honeymoon suite. The warm, charming smile Tendai wore all day vanished. Zahara noticed that her cousin hadn't been served food at the wedding and gently mentioned it. That small comment turned the night cold. Without warning, Tendai turned and slapped her hard. Zahara stood still, too shocked to speak. Her cheek burned, not just from the slap but from disbelief. This was the man she had just promised her life to. He looked at her with a coldness that felt like a stranger. "You will speak only when I allow you," he whispered. Zahara slowly took off her wedding heels, folded her dupatta, and sat down quietly. She didn't cry. Something inside her had broken, or maybe something strong had just begun to wake up. Zahara stood frozen in her bridal gown, her cheeks stinging, not just from the slap but from deep shock. She couldn't believe what had just happened. Just a few hours ago, she was smiling, dancing, and beginning a new life. She had believed she was marrying a good man, someone who would protect and respect her. But now, standing in that silent hotel room, she looked into Tendai's eyes and saw a different person. He wasn't the charming man she had fallen in love with. His eyes were cold. His voice was sharp and filled with control. "You will speak only when I allow you," he whispered, like he was a stranger, like he owned her. That moment hit Zahara harder than the slap itself. She slowly bent down, took off her wedding heels one by one, folded her beautiful dupatta with shaking hands, and sat quietly on the edge of the bed. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Her heart was heavy, but her eyes stayed dry. It was as if something inside her had broken, yes, but it had also woken up. A strong, silent storm was building inside her. She sat in silence, thinking clearly, breathing slowly, letting the pain sink in. But instead of sinking with it, she started rising from within. She looked around the suite, the golden decorations, the wedding flowers, the gifts, all the things that were meant to celebrate love and joy. But now they looked fake. She had dreamed about this day since she was a little girl. She had imagined the perfect husband, the perfect future. But in just 1 second, all those dreams had been shattered. Yet, she didn't feel broken. She felt something new. A strange calm filled her. She knew she had to be smart. She knew she had to be quiet, for now. But inside, she was already planning. Not planning revenge, but planning something bigger. Something that would make sure she was never silent again. Zahara didn't sleep that night. She waited until Tendai was fast asleep. His face looked peaceful, like nothing had happened. He had no guilt, no regret, and that told her everything she needed to know. She quietly got up, put on her bridal clothes again, and packed nothing. No suitcase, no jewelry, not even her phone charger, just her smartwatch, which had recorded everything. She had hit the record button the moment his voice turned cold. Something in her had told her to press it, and now she had proof. As the sun rose, she walked out of the hotel room. She didn't look back. She didn't cry. The hallway was quiet, and the soft sound of her bangles echoed as she walked to the front desk. Still wearing her wedding dress, she asked the hotel manager for a copy of the guest list and CCTV footage of the hallway. She was calm. The staff looked confused, but something in her voice told them not to question her. She thanked them politely and left. She didn't go to her parents. She didn't want to see them cry. She didn't want them to talk her out of her decision. She didn't want pity. She wanted justice. She sat in the hotel lobby, opened her email, and sent the recording to a backup account. She wrote down everything clearly. The slap, the words, the pain. Not as a victim's story, but as the start of something bigger. Then, around noon, Zahara walked into the wedding brunch being hosted by Tendai's family. All the guests were there. Friends, relatives, business partners, politicians. Everyone was laughing, eating, sharing stories about how beautiful the wedding had been. No one knew what had happened behind the closed doors until Zahara walked in. She didn't walk in quietly. She walked in with confidence, holding a microphone. The room went silent. People turned, surprised to see her in her wedding clothes, alone. She looked around slowly, then pressed play on the audio from her smartwatch. The room filled with the sound of Tendai's voice. "You will speak only when I allow you." Then came the loud slap. The silence after the recording was louder than any scream. Faces turned pale. Some gasped. Tendai stood frozen, his fork halfway to his mouth. Zahara looked straight at him, calm and steady. She didn't shout. She didn't curse. She simply said, "This is who he is, behind closed doors, and I will not stay silent." Then she pulled out annulment papers and placed them on the table in front of him. "I'm not your wife," she said with a soft smile. "I'm the lesson you'll never forget." The room erupted into whispers. Camera phones lifted. People talking. Tendai's family looked shocked. His uncle, who had paid for part of the wedding, stood up and walked out. Business partners slowly left the table. That evening, news of the recording spread online. By morning, Tendai's company's shares dropped. His name was everywhere, not as a respected banker, but as a man who hit his wife on their wedding night. And Zahara, she didn't hide. She didn't run. She stood tall. That moment of silence in the hotel room had grown into a voice that echoed across the continent. As the first light of dawn touched the windows of the hotel suite, Zahara sat wide awake. Her bridal gown was still on, slightly wrinkled from a sleepless night. Her hair was no longer perfect. Her makeup had faded, but her eyes were sharp. Tendai was fast asleep beside her, snoring softly like nothing had happened, like he hadn't slapped her, like he hadn't told her she could only speak when he allowed it. Zahara watched him for a moment, not with love, but with quiet strength. Something inside her had changed. She was no longer the bride who walked in with dreams. She was now a woman with a mission, and she wasn't going to wait for an apology that would never come. Slowly and silently, Zahara stood up. She slipped her feet into her wedding shoes again and picked up her smartwatch from the bedside. It had recorded everything. His voice, the slap, the silence that followed. Without a single word, she opened the door and stepped out. The hallway was quiet. Only the faint sounds of mourning filled the space. Still dressed in her wedding clothes, she walked to the elevator, head held high, heart beating steady. She didn't go to her parents. She knew they would cry. They might tell her to forgive him. They might beg her to stay. But Zahara had already made up her mind. She wasn't going to hide or pretend. She wasn't going to become just another story that ends in silence. She wanted truth. She wanted justice. And most of all, she wanted control back. Not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been told to keep quiet. Zahara walked straight to the hotel's front desk. The staff looked surprised. It's not every day a bride shows up at dawn, looking both heartbroken and unshakably strong. She politely asked for the hotel manager. When he arrived, she looked him in the eyes and spoke clearly, calmly. "I need the CCTV footage from the hallway outside my suite," she said. "And I need a printed copy of the guest list from last night's wedding." The manager was confused at first, but didn't ask too many questions. Something in her tone, in her eyes, made him take her seriously. She waited as he went through the system. When he returned with a flash drive and printed pages, she thanked him quietly and took both. No tears, no drama, just determination. Zahara found a quiet corner in the hotel lobby and opened her email. She attached the smartwatch audio file, the CCTV footage, and the guest list to a draft message. She wrote a few simple words in the email body. "This is what happened to me on my wedding night. I will not stay silent." She sent it to herself and saved another copy in the cloud. Then she sat there for a while, still wearing the dress she once thought was magical. She remembered choosing it, feeling so happy, so full of hope. Now, it felt like a costume from someone else's life. But she didn't cry. She just smiled. Not a happy smile, but the kind of smile that comes when you know exactly what you're about to do. She had a plan. It didn't include hiding. It didn't include asking him to say sorry. It didn't include pretending. Zahara knew that many women would suffer in silence, just like she almost did, but not her. Not today. She was going to speak, and when she did, she wanted the whole world to hear her. She picked up her phone, made a few calls, and sent a few texts. She wasn't afraid of what people would say. She wasn't afraid of losing his family's approval or what society would think. What scared her more was the idea of becoming silent, of letting that slap become just another secret behind a closed door. As the hotel lobby began to fill with guests waking up, checking out, or going to breakfast, Zahara sat tall and proud. She wasn't just a bride who had been hurt. She was a woman who had been wronged, and she was about to make sure that wrong didn't go unnoticed. She stood up, fixed her gown, and took one deep breath. Today was not the start of her married life. It was the start of something else, something stronger, something louder. Her story wasn't going to end with heartbreak. It was going to begin with truth, and that truth, once spoken, would shake everything. By noon, the wedding brunch was in full swing. Laughter echoed through the big hall. Tendai's family had spared no expense. There were gold tablecloths, shining glasses, and huge flower arrangements on every table. Waiters moved between guests, serving fresh juice and plates full of colourful food. The 300 guests were all smiling. Business partners, relatives, old friends, people who had flown in just to celebrate the union. Everyone believed this was the perfect ending to a perfect wedding. Everyone believed Zahara and Tendai were now happily beginning their life together. Then the doors at the back of the hall opened. Zahara walked in. She was still wearing her wedding dress, the same one from the night before. It was no longer spotless, and her makeup was faded, but her face had a different kind of glow now. It wasn't the soft smile of a new bride. It was the calm fire of a woman who had made up her mind. She wasn't walking fast, but her steps were strong. She didn't look left or right. She walked straight to the front of the room. All eyes turned to her. A few people gasped, a few whispered. Tendai, who had been smiling at a table near the stage, froze in his seat. In Zahara's hand was a small black microphone. She stood in the center of the room, facing the crowd. Everyone went quiet. You could hear the air conditioner hum. The clinking of plates stopped. No one knew what she was about to say, but everyone knew something serious was coming. Zahara lifted the microphone slowly. "I know many of you are here to celebrate our wedding," she said. Her voice was steady. "But I can't let this event continue without showing you who you're really celebrating." Tendai stood up quickly. "Zahara, what are you doing?" he said, trying to sound calm, but panic flashed in his eyes. Zahara didn't answer him. She raised her smartwatch to the mic and tapped a button. The room was silent for half a second. Then it played the recording. "You will speak only when I allow you." Tendai's voice echoed through the speakers. Then, the loud, clear sound of a slap. Gasps filled the room. Some women covered their mouths. Some men looked down, unable to meet Zahara's eyes. People turned to Tendai, who stood frozen, face pale, mouth slightly open. The silence after the slap felt louder than anything. Zahara waited. She let the silence stay for a few seconds. Then she spoke again. "This was our wedding night," she said. "I told him my cousin didn't get food. That's all. And this is how he responded. I was silent last night, but I won't be silent now." People were whispering now. Phones were already being pulled out. Some guests had started recording. Others had already opened news apps and social media. Zahara turned to face Tendai. She walked toward him calmly and placed a white envelope in front of him on the table. "These are annulment papers," she said clearly. "Our marriage ends today." Tendai didn't speak. He didn't move. Zahara looked around the room. "You came here to celebrate a wedding," she said. "But I refuse to celebrate lies. I refuse to stay with a man who hits a woman and acts like nothing happened. I'm not just a bride. I'm a person, and I will not belong to anyone who doesn't respect that." The room was dead silent again. No music, no clapping, just the sound of truth echoing through the walls. Zahara stepped down from the small stage. Her job was done. She had nothing else to say. She didn't need to cry, didn't need to scream. Her voice had already changed everything. People began to rise from their seats. Tendai's uncle, a well-known businessman who had helped pay for the wedding, shook his head in disappointment and walked out without a word. Some business partners followed. Guests avoided Tendai's eyes. The beautiful brunch was now a disaster. Zahara walked through the crowd. Some tried to speak to her, but she kept moving, gently and with grace. Her head was high. Her steps were steady. She wasn't broken. She was free. Outside the hall, the sun was bright. Zahara stood under its light, finally feeling its warmth. Her wedding was over, but her story was just beginning. Inside, Tendai was still frozen, surrounded by empty chairs and the sound of his own downfall. The truth had spoken, and Zahara, the woman everyone had underestimated, had become the voice no one could ignore. What happened next was like a storm that no one saw coming. Within hours after Zahara walked out of that wedding brunch, her video had gone viral. Someone had posted the recording, the slap, the voice, Zahara's calm speech, and it spread like wildfire. People across the country watched and shared it. News pages picked it up. Blogs, influencers, and women's rights groups reposted it with messages of support. The internet was filled with Zahara's name, and for all the right reasons. But for Tendai, everything began to fall apart. That same night, his company's stock dropped by 16%. Investors panicked. Clients started cancelling meetings. His name, once respected in banking and business circles, was now tied to abuse. Tendai's face was no longer on business panels. It was on news headlines with the title, "The Man Who Slapped His Bride." People who had once smiled at him now avoided his calls. His inbox was filled with meeting cancellations. His business partners, especially the foreign ones, didn't want to be associated with him anymore. One by one, they started cutting ties, publicly and silently. Even his own family couldn't protect him. His uncle, a powerful man who had helped pay for the big wedding, was furious, not only because of the slap, but because Zahara had exposed it in front of top guests, including clients and leaders from other industries. The uncle didn't just scold him in private. He went on record and gave a short statement. "I withdraw all support for Tendai until he publicly makes things right and takes accountability for his actions." That sentence hit harder than any business loss, because in their world, public image was everything. Meanwhile, Zahara stayed calm through it all. She didn't post long messages online. She didn't make emotional videos. She simply let the truth speak for itself. She was offered interviews, deals, brand partnerships, but she took her time. She was not trying to be famous. She was trying to be heard. Back in the brunch hall, after the slap recording had echoed through the speakers and the guests began whispering, Zahara had done one more thing. She had looked Tendai in the eye and handed him a white envelope. He had stared at it, confused at first, but when he opened it, his face dropped. "Annulment papers," she had said softly but firmly. "Signed, sealed and ready. You don't have to say anything, Tendai. You already said enough last night." She paused for just a second, then added, "I'm not your wife. I'm the lesson you'll never forget." And she meant every word. Tendai hadn't said anything. He couldn't. His throat was dry. His hands shook. He wanted to shout, to deny, to explain, but there was nothing left to say. Zahara had given him no room to twist the story, no room to lie or control the narrative. She had all the evidence, all the power, and she hadn't even raised her voice. That was what shook everyone even more. The way she stayed calm. No screaming, no crying, no begging, just truth, just action. And as the world reacted, Zahara moved on with quiet strength. She didn't hide. She walked through airports, hotels, public places with confidence. Strangers came up to her to thank her. Women sent her messages saying, "You gave me courage." Men said, "You made me rethink what silence means." Even people from other countries shared her story with hashtags like #OneSlap, #OneRevolution. Tendai, on the other hand, was drowning in silence. He tried to fight back, issued a short press release claiming misunderstanding and personal family matters, but no one listened. Every time someone Googled his name, the first result was Zahara's speech. Every time he tried to apply for work abroad, the HR department had already seen the video. People said Zahara had destroyed his life, but Zahara didn't see it that way. She didn't destroy anything. He had done that all on his own. All she did was turn on a microphone and show the world who he really was behind closed doors. And that's why she never had to raise her voice. The truth was loud enough. The world had seen many women stay silent after abuse. But Zahara chose to speak, not with anger, but with power, not with revenge, but with clarity. She knew millions of women were watching her. She knew some of them were still trapped in fear. She wanted to be the voice that whispered to them, "You can stand up, you can leave, and you will still shine." That slap could have been the start of her pain. Instead, it became the start of her power. And Tendai, he would never forget her face. Not the bride in white, but the woman who stood in front of a crowd, held up a microphone and calmly said, "I'm not your wife, I'm your consequence." 1 year later, Zahara's life looked completely different. She was no longer just known as the bride in the viral video. She had become a voice for thousands of women. Now living in Lagos, she ran a growing NGO that focused on helping victims of domestic abuse. The organization partnered with shelters, legal aid groups, and therapists across Africa. Zahara spent her days visiting safe houses, training volunteers, and giving talks in schools and community centers. She didn't want sympathy, she wanted change, and she was making it happen, one brave woman at a time. Her story, one slap, one revolution, had touched hearts around the world. It was turned into a short film, and within weeks, it became the most watched digital story in Kenya. Young girls shared it. Mothers cried watching it. Even men wrote messages saying the film had opened their eyes. Zahara had taken her pain and turned it into power, not just for herself, but for others too. And Tendai, he tried to move on. He applied for jobs in South Africa, Dubai, even Europe. But everywhere he went, employers Googled his name. Every search led to Zahara's video. The slap that once silenced her had now become the voice that followed him forever.